Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Pat Dunstan. Thanks for joining us today, Pat.
I am so happy to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
You're very welcome. So I always start by saying how we met, and I usually say LinkedIn, but for us, that was not the case. We actually met in Jamaica.
That's correct. We did. Beautiful
And
location.
yes, and to give our friends a shout out, Andrea and Noel. It was a destination birthday for Noel, and we were both their friends that were invited, and you and I both enjoyed early morning walks on the beach and tropical drinks by the pool.
That's exactly correct.
And after I got home, you continued to send me some inspirational messages because actually the week I got back, I was about to have my third surgery, for cancer.
Yes.
And you've been, very kind, and we've found ways to support each other. And that's how we met, and I'm very grateful for it.
Me too. It's been a wonderful experience learning about you and how your disease process, how you handle your disease process. It's been amazing.
Yeah, well, thank you, and you as well, Pat. And by way of introducing you, Pat is a nurse and a lawyer and a patient with Parkinson's. And today we'll be talking about Pat's experiences as a patient with Parkinson's. So as we begin, what would you most like our audience to know about you, Pat?
That I'm not Parkinson's disease. That's not my name. My name is Pat Dunstan. And although I have Parkinson's, I am living my best life. And I do not let the Parkinson's define me. It's here. It's something I have to deal with, but it does not define the person that I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And would you like to tell us a little bit about your past, like as a nurse, as a lawyer, finding out that you had Parkinson's?
Yes, I was always somebody that think I could do anything. So I was always very excited about learning, and being a nurse was a wonderful experience. I learned how to deal with a lot of different types of people, and I realized that I was a people person. And so whatever job I had, it had to involve people. So I started out as a nurse, and then I decided after some time that being a lawyer would be good for me as well. So I worked as a nurse during the day and went to law school at night. And it has been an experience. I'm finished with law school. I've had a family. I'm living my life, and life is grand. And in an instant, life changes. I see a little twitching on my finger of my right hand that I'm not causing it to twitch, but it's twitching. And so when I met with my general practitioner, I just happened to mention that. And she said, go see a neurologist. And so I went to the neurologist, and he said, how's your handwriting? I said, oh, my handwriting is so bad, but I type all the time on the computer. So I attributed to that. How's your spirits? Oh, I'm good, but I'm tired all the time because I'm working so hard. And he went on to ask me several other questions, and every question he asked, I had a problem with it, but I also had an answer for why I was having this problem. And eventually I learned that all of those things that he asked me were all the signs of Parkinson's disease. So after doing some other diagnostic tests to rule out other things, one morning he said, come in and we'll sit down and talk. And when I went in, it was a beautiful sunny day outside. And I remember him telling me I have Parkinson's disease. And I thought of Michael J. Fox moving around. And I said, oh, I can't be like Michael J. Fox, but I know there's a medicine. All I have to do is take a pill and keep going, because I know there's medicine to take care of this. What I didn't realize was that no, there's medicine to help the disease as you go through the disease, but there's no medicine to rid yourself of the disease. And so I've had the disease now for about 10 years. And I have learned a lot about Parkinson's disease. I've learned a lot about myself as a result of that. And so over the past 10 years, my symptoms have progressed, and I no longer work. But I do other things that I feel like I'm working. And in addition to that, in the near future, I will be having what's called deep brain stimulation surgery, which is surgery where they implant electrodes into your brain to help you with manage some of the movements of Parkinson's disease.
Hmm. How long were you able to continue working after you were first diagnosed?
After I was first diagnosed, it took about, I'd say, 9 months to a year, because several things happened. One, at work, I was hiding the fact that I had Parkinson's disease. Prior to being diagnosed, I was telling my colleagues, "Oh my God, my hand is shaking. I don't wonder why it's shaking." But once I had a diagnosis, I no longer told them. I hid everything. And then I was having problems understanding, uh, example, numbers. I was transposing numbers incorrectly. Anybody that would call me, and if I wrote their number down, when I went to call them, that number was always wrong. So I realized at that time that I was transposing numbers, and that was very concerning because I dealt with a lot of money where I had to write checks to people, and I also had to verbalize numbers. So that was one problem. The other problem I was having was I was accustomed to dealing with very complex situations. And then what happened was I started having an issue where when people would tell me complex issues, it would hurt my brain. I didn't want to hear anything complex. It was like I literally had a pain in my brain. And so anything that was complex, I'd set up a file, what I'd call a file 13. And what started as a little pile of files started growing and growing and growing, because each time, if anything was complex, I just couldn't handle it. And when someone asked me something, I was having difficulty verbally explaining it to them. However, I could write, and that would be easier. So if you asked me a simple question, I would write a really big answer to make sure you didn't come back and ask me again. So I would write more than I needed to write just to make sure that I wasn't exposed. I was hiding myself.
Right, to kind of overcompensating in a way.
Exactly, exactly. And I didn't want anybody to know because I was afraid I would lose my job, and I felt like I needed my job. But I couldn't, I was having difficulty even with speech. I would look at something, an example, I would look at a cup and I would know that it's a cup. But when I opened my mouth and said something, I wouldn't call it a cup, I would call it something else. And that was very concerning to me, because I felt like I had no control over what was happening. And I was beating myself up because I thought it was me. But I kept saying, I'm tired, I'm working hard. And those are the things that were keeping me from being able to fully focus on something. So once I realized those symptoms were taking place, I spoke with my neurologist, who said I need to get a neuropsychological test. And after taking the neuropsychological test, which basically, and I know your audience knows this, but it basically shows you pictures and things like that. You have to describe what you saw or give some explanation, some follow a pattern in doing something. And what I found out when I had the neuropsychological test, lots of words I could not remember. I would look at something, I didn't know what it was, and I couldn't explain myself. Even with simple things, I was having difficulty explaining what I saw. So at that point, it was determined that for the type of job that I had, being in the workplace was not the best place to be.
So that was a kind of a mutual decision with the neurologist, the neuropsychologist, and yourself.
Yes. Well, the neuropsychologist, once I went to her, it was shocking because as she showed me things, I started crying. I was in her office, not crying, bawling, because as she was showing me something, which something simple, and she would say, just describe what you saw. And I would cry because I couldn't find the words to describe what I saw. I had lost a lot of vocabulary, and it was just very painful because I really didn't know what was happening to me. And so it was scary and painful.
And Ann is a nurse and a lawyer, right? Are you telling you because you also have a self-awareness of that, and you're like, here I am, I'm a nurse, I'm a lawyer, and I can't bring the word cup to my mind.
Absolutely. That's exactly it. And I remember one day I went somewhere, and I was listening to someone speak, and they used the word that I knew from my past, but it had been lost in my memory. And I heard them use the word, and for approximately half an hour, I just kept repeating that word in my brain, and I was so happy because it was a word that I recognized. And I said, "Oh my God, I had lost this word, but now I know what I heard it again, and I knew what it was." And I was shocked at myself that I was so excited for half an hour about one simple word. And it made me realize how much that there was a lot more going on than I even realized.
Right. And it must have been so challenging to hide those parts of yourself for those months, and stressful. That must have been incredibly stressful while you were working.
It was very, very stressful. And when I initially went to the neurologist, um, he understood what was going on with me, but I didn't fully understand. And because I didn't want to read about the disease, I wasn't interested. I just wanted the pills that would take care of this. So I didn't fully understand all that was going on with me, and I didn't understand what the ramifications of the disease meant. Although I saw Michael J. Fox on TV, it just didn't completely register until I'm in the space now. And at this point, I fully understand that, it's a disease that's degenerative, it's progressive, it's a disease that there's no cure for, and yet and still you have to learn how to live your best life with the disease. And that's where our doctors come in, because our doctors are they're the cornerstone of everything right, but right now, because um what we don't understand as patients, they understand as doctors, because they've either had the experience or they've learned. So one of the most important people in my life is my doctor right now, my movement disorder specialist, who's a neurologist that focuses on movement disorders.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, that's beautiful, and that is so important, and it's true. So when you left work, you must have had so many different feelings about that. Did you want to describe that? Like maybe relief that you weren't going to have to try to hide, but maybe frustration or disappointment about your career ending?
Oh, Kim, I had a lot of feelings, very ambivalent feelings. I was so happy to leave work because I was afraid they were going to fire me if they knew what was going on with me, because I know I couldn't do the work. I things were just piling up. So I had that major fear. And I also had a major fear of once I leave work, what do I do? But I was so happy to leave. So I left work, let's say on a Friday. And on Monday morning, I woke up in complete panic. What do I do with myself now? And I grew up with part of who you are is your job. And to be worthwhile in society, you should be working. And so I was in panic when I woke up on the Monday. I was sweating. But I did remember that a friend of mine had introduced me to, in the town that I live, they had a senior center. So I made a decision. I was going to go to the senior center, even though I wasn't fully yet a senior, but getting close. Um, I decided that morning I was going to go to the senior building to see what was going on there. And then I was going to go to the library to get some help in terms of what is available for me to do to just keep myself busy and to feel like I was worthy, because I definitely didn't feel worthy in this moment. And I felt like somehow or the other, it was my fault that this is
Mhm.
going on. So I did go to the senior center, and I have not left. I never got to the library. They
Wow.
had, I never got there. They had so many activities going on at the senior center that they had memoir writing class, they had exercise class, they had a book reading, they had jewelry making, they had dances, they had all sorts of things going on there that I got so busy. I couldn't believe it. I was so excited because I got myself into sewing. They had a sewing class, and I was able to make things. Not great, but what I did, I decided to give all of my clothes away, and I would only wear my own designs.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it wasn't perfect, but I felt so good that I was doing something. And what I learned is the thing, I didn't know any of these things existed that I was doing.
Mm.
And it was amazing to me that I was doing things that I never would have dreamed of, meeting people that I never would have dreamed I would have met. And it has completely enriched my life in ways that I could never, ever have imagined.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. And you didn't stay down for long. You did that very next day.
Yeah, the next week, I think I left work on a Friday. By Monday, I was because I was so afraid. I
Mm-hmm.
was afraid of what am I worth? What I equated my worthiness with my job. And I've subsequently learned, no, there's more to life than that. And I have learned how to be accepting of where I am, what I'm doing, and also be able to present it to other people. Because when you meet someone, other than your name, if people get to that, the next thing is, what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to get very comfortable with what I did, because if I didn't get comfortable, nobody was going to be comfortable with me.
Mm-hmm.
And as a part of getting comfortable with just with myself and the changes, I actually saw a neuropsychologist for about a year and a half. And I was able to get in touch with her through the same people that did the neuropsychological testing to determine I was having a problem. So I saw the neuropsychologist for about a year and a half to 2 years. And with her help, I'm able to be the person that I am today, because without her help, I think I was be a complete disaster.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Well, that's wonderful that you had that person to help you. And I know many physicians can resonate with what you said about feeling worthy or not worthy. I've spoken with numerous physicians that have either retired or pivoted from clinical work. And when your entire, just like if your entire identity was wrapped up in being a lawyer, the same holds true for physicians, and their entirety identity is often wrapped up in being a physician. And they're like, if I'm not practicing as a physician, what am I? And we've had discussions about that, because I felt a little of the same. Not actually practicing as a physical therapist right now. And it's like, am I a physical therapist? Was I a physical therapist? And I feel like, well, I keep my license current, so it's okay to still say I'm a physical therapist. And just all of those things that you said would ring true for physicians as well. And that
Yes,
exactly what you said too, that you're more than your job title, right? And you're a
yes,
mother, you're a wife, you're an aunt, you're a daughter, and you're a sewer, you're a kickboxer, you do so many things, you're a singer, right?
yes, yes.
You get to be all of those things. I get to be all of my things, and doctors get to be all of their things.
And the fact of the matter is, I've learned not to lead with what do you do, into meaning professionally. When I speak
Mhm.
to people
People.
and they say something that's not professional, I hone in on that. And that's what I start talking with them about. Oh, you like gardening?
Yeah,
Oh my,
uh-huh.
what are you planting? Or I try to lead with something like that to show, as I'm talking, that one, I'm hearing you, and that I am putting out there that there are things about you that I will like, that has
Mhm.
nothing to do with your job.
I think that's wonderful, and that's a lesson that everyone can take from that. And instead of saying, "What do you do?" it could be, "What do you like to do in your free time?"
Hmm.
Right? That might be a
That's
much better leading question and lead to more interesting conversations.
That's exactly true. I have been in fashion shows. I'm singing. I've sang at the Count Basie Theater. I've sang at other theaters. My singing group just sang at Yankee Stadium, the national anthem last week. Uh, I have had so many experiences that I do not know how I would have had them had I been well and working.
Mhm.
So
Wow. Yeah.
it's new. I don't want to be ill, but
Right.
there's so many wonderful things that I'm able to appreciate and enjoy during this period.
Right. And that's part of that radical acceptance, right? If you're familiar with that term, when we can't change certain things about our health or our diagnosis, it's what can we still do? How can we accept that and move forward?
Yeah, and Kim, one of the things I've had to do, one is I have to speak into that. I have to speak about making sure that I operate from a positive perspective, and also surround myself with friends and family who are positive people. And then additionally, I identify people who I see that they want to help me, but they don't know what to do, and I make sure that I acknowledge uh, the small things that they do or the large things that they do, that I acknowledge it. Just like with the doctors, my surgeon, my neurologist he's amazing. I walk in and he spends time. He remembers. He'll ask me something about my grandson, and I really appreciate that. And I try to do the same, even though I'm there for a medical reason. How is your daughter? Oh, I
Mhm.
remember you told me she moved to Pennsylvania. How is she enjoying
Mhm.
Pennsylvania? And it allows me to have a wonderful relationship with my doctor. And then also, I feel good about my doctor, not just as my doctor, but as a family friend. He's a friend of the family.
Mhm. Yeah, I love that, right? Because like we keep saying, doctors are human too, doctors are people too, and you're acknowledging their humanity. They're a person, they have kids, they have spouses, right? They have other interests as well. Yeah, that's wonderful.
Exactly.
That's wonderful, Pat. So in some conversations I've had with various physicians, one doctor had said his patients left his practice early on and he realized that he was focusing more on the science when they were with him than the fact that there was a person right in front of him and he's learned. I was wondering if you have anything to speak to that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I've had many different types of doctors because of the Parkinson's disease and the various areas that it touches on. And there are two types of doctors. There's the doctors that come in and they have their paper in hand, and they're ready to go and get the job done and go out. And there are the doctors who spend time. They want to know about your household. They want to know who you are. And I've had both, but especially because the Parkinson doctors have to spend more time with the patients, because the patients, the movements are slower, the thinking is a little slower. And usually, depending on where you are in the process, you come in with a aide or a helper, your husband, your grandchild. You come in with somebody to help you, so they get a chance to meet members of your family as well as you, the patient. And so one of the things that I'm very conscious about, because I think I told you in the beginning that I'm a people person, I make it a point to find something, intentionally find something that's nice to be able to say. And it could be the intentional, it could be as simple as, you have great bedside manner when you're talking with me. Or it could be, hey, where did you go to school? Or did you like the town that the school was in? Just something to kind of develop some relatability. And then once I find something that we can relate to, me too. Oh, I love Boston. Did you ever go to the Celtics game? And I end up being able to relate to them. So my doctors are my family.
I was gonna say, I
They're
bet you're
family.
their favorite patient.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. But I do see that the doctors are trying, and I know it's very hard. Example, the disease like my disease, because Parkinson's, because it is degenerative. It's not like they're going to see somebody now and they say, "Oh, this person is cured. I've done a great job," and this person is cured. What they're seeing is somebody who is degenerating. So within the confines of what that means, they have to find what's good to help them. And the patient has to find me. I have to find what's good in spite of what's going on. And so that sometimes potentially could be a challenge. But also for me, I found that my doctors say, "Boy, you're in good shape. You exercise a lot." And in truth, I do. And so although I'm having uh, things that naturally occur with the disease, they can find something that is working well. And I can relate and say, "Hey, yeah, you're right. This is working well. And I'm exercising and I feel great."
That's great, and that was a really important point that doctors can't always fix everything. There's some things that they can fix, and as a doctor and a patient, that you both have to find meaning and purpose and ways to move forward, accepting the reality of the diagnosis and the situation.
Exactly. And it's so wonderful because when you or me, when I can find even a little thing that I'm happy about, I can walk in and say, "Hey, medically, this is what's happening to me. But let me tell you, I was able to do X
Mhm.
with my hand today."
Right. And
And,
gratitude. You're the queen of gratitude, Pat. I can say that for sure. You send me
uh,
daily inspirational messages. So yeah,
uh,
I dubbed you the queen of gratitude.
thank you. And gratitude is important. It really is, because although our doctors are doctors and they're working hard and they're doing the best that they can, we have to be thankful for them, because a lot of people I know, and I've shared this with you a million times, they say they don't care necessarily about the doctor's feelings because the doctor makes a lot of money. He only saw me for 10 minutes, and I'm sure he billed that insurance X, Y, and Z amount. And so there's not a lot of appreciation at times for what the doctor is doing, although it's something that's life saving. But the thoughts are, "Oh my God, he's making so much money. Uh, he has nothing to complain about. He should be happy." And so there's not that empathy for the doctor. But being a healthcare person myself, as a nurse, and also just as a human being, I understand that this is being a doctor is just their job, and that they have a whole other life like you and me. And so with that being said, I try to make sure that I build a relationship, that even if I'm no longer with that doctor, I still can have a relationship where I can call and say, "Dr. So and so, what do you think about blah, blah, blah? Can I come in and get a second opinion from you on something?"
Well, that's fantastic, Pat. And another thing that we've spoken about on other occasions is the critical nature of communication. Because we can be grateful for doctors, we can have great relationship with doctors. And in addition, sometimes things don't always go well, and how important it is to communicate that with your doctor instead of just writing a bad review, to actually have a conversation.
Yes, I agree. I agree with you on that completely. But the best conversation you can have is when you've built a relationship with the doctor, and the doctor, to me, the doctor will find your complaints legitimate. But if he doesn't know you, doesn't hasn't built a relationship together as a team, then it's harder to. It may not be hard for someone to express, but for me, it would be a little harder, because I'm not sure if he or she would understand what I'm saying, and that it's not meant as harm, but it's meant to clarify, and that we can go on together or separate whatever we decide to do, but that it's we're in agreement, or at least some level of understanding. I think that as a patient, sometimes we're afraid to say anything. We just get a new doctor and we don't say anything. But I think that for the doctor's viability through the years, as well as for us as patients, we need to be able to say to our doctors, as you said, we've talked about this, where we say to the doctor, this is what happened. I'm not sure what this means. Could you explain this to me? Or my interpretation of what was to happen didn't happen, whatever the case may be. And hopefully we can build a relationship. And that doctor has to take the time out to make sure that they hear the patient. Because a lot of times you have a problem and you call the office back, you can't get through to a doctor. Oh, you can talk to the secretary, you can talk to this one or that one, but you can't get to the doctor. And the doctor has to, in my opinion, let the staff know that there's some things that you can handle in a very common way, same thing over and over again. But there are times when situations occur that's out of the norm, as that usually of what usually happens. And the doctor has to identify or at least teach their staff that they have to handle those issues differently. They cannot handle it as if it was the same that they handled yesterday, because the doctor, a situation that the doctor could easily solve may not get solved because the person doesn't recognize that this needs to be escalated to another level. They're trying to handle it at their level when they're just not able to do it. And doctors, when you go into their office, it's such an intimate place because all your records are there, you're taking your clothes off, you're doing all sorts of things. So it's important that there's some kind of understanding that if something goes wrong between us, our relationship, that we can talk. And I see doctors as a team, because I need to have a team approach to how I manage my health care. So I want to get along with my medical personnel, everybody, from the doctors on down. I want to be able to have that relationship that allows me to communicate with them effectively.
Exactly right. And an open communication, open, honest communication is so important. And then the doctor can learn things, and it can deepen your relationship if you do that and prepare for the conversation and do it well. And
Absolutely.
thank you again for us having this conversation today, because I think it's so critical to hear from patients about their true lived experience. Because again, unless you've lived it, it's so true. You can have some level of empathy, but you can't really know. And when people share their stories, because I've actually spoken with doctors who have had medical issues, whether it's cancer or something else, and it's eye-opening for them to be in the role of a patient or to have these conditions, and then they feel exactly like a patient, and they have all the same feelings as any other patient would, the experience of being a patient. So thank you again for sharing your experience with us, Pat. I appreciate that.
You are welcome, and thank you for inviting me. It was my pleasure.
Okay, sure. And if our listeners would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
The best way is through my email, pdunstan11@yahoo.com, and I will answer every email.
Okay. Well, thanks again for being my guest, Pat. It was a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
And
Thank you.
you're welcome. And in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices, and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.